Dungeons & Dragons has given us hundreds of monsters over 50 years. Some of them are original creations, Gary Gygax staring at a dungeon grid and thinking, what if the corridor itself was the monster? But some of them are older, much older. Some of them come from a place so deep in the human imagination that they were already ancient when the Vikings were young. The troll is one of those. I've gone through every source I could find on this one, the Norse Eddas, the Icelandic sagas, the folklore collections of Asbjornsen and Moe, Dragon magazine issues going back to the early 80s, every monster manual ever printed, campaign settings from the Forgotten Realms to Eberron to the blasted wastes of Athos, and a 1961 paperback novel that, as it turns out, is responsible for one of the most iconic monster mechanics in the history of the game. We're going to cover all of it. So settle back, grab yourself a tasty beverage. It's time to get deeply nerdy. This is the complete guide to the troll. The word troll comes from Old Norse. In the oldest Scandinavian sources, it's applied broadly to dangerous supernatural beings associated with wilderness, night, and the uncanny. Related words include trolla, to bewitch, and trolldom, meaning sorcery or dark magic. Right from the start, the troll isn't just a big stupid thing that hits you, it's something genuinely otherworldly, something that exists in opposition to human order and human safety. In the oldest Norse literature, the prose Edda and the poetic Edda, the great Icelandic family sagas, the line between trolls and giants is blurry at best. The Jotnar, the frost giants of Norse cosmology, were the primordial enemies of the Aesir gods. Immense, ancient, elemental. Frost and stone and fire and sea all had their giant kin, and they lived in Jotunheimr, one of the 9 worlds on Yggdrasil, the perpetually opposed to Midgard, the world of humanity. Trolls were creatures of the outer dark, dwellers of the margins, things that lived beyond the firelight. The hero Grettir in Grettir's saga is one of the most celebrated Icelandic sagas, fights a troll woman beneath a waterfall, wrestling her down into a lightless cave in an episode that scholars have compared to Beowulf fighting Grendel in the Mere. That structure, the monster in the liminal space, the inaccessible dark place, the hero who goes where ordinary people won't. That's the template. It shows up in saga after saga, and it shows up in D&D every time your party decides to go deeper into the dungeon than is strictly advisable. Then Christianity arrived in Scandinavia and everything changed. The old gods became demons, the spirits of the wilderness became agents of evil. The troll, formerly a being of ambiguous supernatural power, got recast through Christian moral lens as a creature of darkness, opposed to God, opposed to order, and opposed to the light. And this is where the troll gets its most iconic and durable characteristics. The idea of trolls turning to stone and sunlight, almost certainly a product of this period. In folk belief, sunlight carried associations of divine grace. Creatures of chaos and darkness simply could not endure it. The image of a troll caught by light and frozen forever as a rock formation told people that even without a hero, even without a sword, God's light was sufficient to destroy the worst things in the wilderness. It's also a tremendously satisfying narrative beat, and it's one we're going to see show up again and again, right through to Tolkien and well beyond. Church bells drove trolls away, cold iron protected against them. Newly consecrated Christian sites were understood to be inherently hostile to troll kind. Across Norway and Sweden, you can still find place names that preserve legends of trolls who were chased off or destroyed when the church was built nearby. Regional differences matter here because the trolls of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark evolved in genuinely distinct directions, and those distinctions fed into what eventually we got in D&D. Norwegian trolls, they're the big ones, the dramatic ones, mountain-dwelling giants of almost geological scale, sometimes with multiple heads, covered in moss and bark-like skin. ancient enough to have been present when the mountains themselves were formed. And honestly, in the Norwegian landscape, that makes complete sense. Those mountains are vast and remote and genuinely dangerous. And in a world before search and rescue, people disappeared into them and never came back. The troll was the explanation. It was the thing in the dark that took them. Swedish trolls show considerably more variety. Smaller forest creatures capable of mischief and minor magic. Beings that could steal children and leave changelings in their place. Danish trolls were often conceived as smaller and cleverer still, closer to the malicious fairy than the mountain-destroying giant. It's the smaller, more cunning tradition that fed into the Victorian fairy tale troll that most of us encountered in children's books long before we ever picked up a monster manual. The 19th century is where things really accelerate for us, because this is where the troll gets collected, codified, and illustrated in ways that would eventually feed directly into modern fantasy. As Bjornson and Moe published their collection of Norwegian folk tales between 1841 and 1844, and what they assembled was the narrative grammar of the troll encounter that we still use today. The monster in the mountain, the hero who succeeds by cleverness rather than strength, the sunrise as salvation. Simple, durable, and endlessly repeatable. Then there's the painter Theodor Kittelsen. If you've ever seen an illustration of a great mossy, tree-bark-skinned troll lurching out of the Norwegian forest at twilight, you've seen Kittelsen's influence whether you knew it or not. He gave the literary troll its visual form, half geological, half living, genuinely ancient and threatening. And those images defined popular troll iconography in ways that fed all the way through to Tolkien and then to us. And speaking of Tolkien, no single person did more to shape the modern D&D troll than J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a professional scholar of Old Norse and Old English, so this wasn't casual inspiration. This was his field of academic expertise, and he drew directly on everything we've been discussing when he built the Trolls of Middle-earth. Bert, Tom, and William in The Hobbit deploy the oldest possible mechanics. Stupidity as a fatal weakness, sunrise as destruction. Gandalf tricks them into arguing until dawn turns them to stone. Direct from the folklore, used with complete confidence, and it works beautifully. In The Lord of the Rings, the cave troll in Moria is something else entirely. Enormous, terrifying, nearly kills Frodo. And then there's the Olog Hai, trolls bred by Sauron specifically to endure sunlight, an engineering variant designed to overcome the race's central weakness. Sound familiar? It should. We're going to talk about the war trolls later in this guide, and the parallel is striking. Tolkien's influence on D&D was comprehensive and foundational. When Gary Gygax built his monsters, he was working directly from the vocabulary Tolkien had assembled, which was itself assembled from Norse and Germanic mythology. The chain goes ancient Scandinavia to medieval saga to Victorian folklore collected, then to Tolkien, then to D&D. When your party faces a troll across the table, they are, at several removes, encountering something that descended directly from the monsters of Icelandic saga and Norwegian folktale. Now, here's the part I find genuinely fascinating, and I think it changes how you understand the D&D troll entirely. The troll's most distinct mechanical trait, regeneration, the ability to grow back from nearly any wound, to regrow severed limbs, from the largest remaining piece of a dismembered troll to eventually becoming a whole new troll. That doesn't come from Norse mythology or Tolkien. It barely appears in Scandinavian folk tradition in anything like that specific form. So where does it come from? Poul Anderson, 1961, a novel called 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. Anderson was drawing on Scandinavian tradition for his trolls. The general concept, the wilderness association, the threat, but the specific mechanic of regeneration and the specific vulnerability to fire appears to be largely his own creation contribution. His trolls regenerate. They can only be permanently stopped by fire. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson adopted this almost directly when they built D&D, and that single creation decision by a science fiction author writing a paperback in 1961 became one of the most iconic monster mechanics in the history of tabletop gaming. Think about that for a moment. Every frantic search for a torch, every player who's watched a downed troll start twitching back to life, every argument about whether acid counts, or all of that traces back to a single novel that most people who play D&D have never even read. The D&D troll is not a transcription of ancient mythology. It's a creation synthesis. It's Norse mythology filtered through Victorian folklore collection, then passed through Tolkien's literary reconstruction and transformed by mid-20th century fantasy fiction, and finally codified into game mechanics by Gygax. Every stage added something. Every stage changed something. And the regeneration that defines every single troll encounter, that shapes the tactics, the fear, the desperate scramble for fire, that came from a paperback published the year before the Beatles released their first single. The folk tradition troll was something more complex than what ended up in the monster manual. Norwegian farmers had relationships with their trolls of their local mountains that they genuinely were nuanced, involving respect, avoidance, the occasional careful negotiation, and a deep understanding that the wilderness beyond the valley was not theirs to own. The troll wasn't just an obstacle, it was a representation of everything that lay outside the safety of the community. The dark mountains, the winter storms, the forest where people went and didn't come back. What D&D preserved, the physical appearance, the cave dwelling, the nocturnal habits, the association with wilderness and isolation, and the regeneration. What D&D largely lost was the troll as something genuinely mysterious, the possibility of negotiation, the sense that it belongs to a specific place and has a relationship with that place that goes back further than anyone can remember. The best troll encounters, the ones your players will actually remember, are the ones that try to recover some of that, where the troll isn't just a hit point total with a fire weakness, but a creature that belongs somewhere, that has a history, that is in its own way as real to the wilderness it inhabits as the adventurers are to the towns they come from. Keep that in mind as we go deeper, because we're going to go much, much deeper. So, what exactly is a troll? A standard troll stands somewhere between 9 and 14 feet tall and weighs in at anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds in the literature, but that should be roughly doubled to between 700 and 2,700 pounds. They have a hunched, forward-leaning posture, rubbery hide that runs from moss green to putrid grey depending on the individual and the environment. And hair that's best described as ropey and writhing. It moves in ways that don't entirely make sense given the ambient airflow, and experienced adventurers will tell you not to think about that too hard. Their arms are long, ungainly long. When a troll runs, their arms drag along the ground, which looks ridiculous right up until you realize how fast they're actually moving. Because despite everything about their silhouette suggesting something slow and lumbering, trolls are surprisingly agile. Don't let the posture fool you. People who let the posture fool them tend not to get a second chance to reconsider. The skin is rubbery and tough, not armored in any conventional sense, but dense enough that bladed weapons have less effect than you'd hope. The real protection isn't the hide, though. It never was. The real protection is what happens after you hurt them. Regeneration. This is the defining characteristic of the troll. Everything else about them, the strength, the claws, the bite, the smell, the sheer unpleasant presence of the thing, all of that is secondary to this one biological fact. Trolls regenerate, not in a vague, impressive-sounding way, in a specific, deeply inconvenient, mechanically terrifying way. Cut off a troll's arm, and the arm keeps fighting. Cut the troll in half, and you now have two problems. Sever the head, and both parts, the head and the body, may eventually independently work towards becoming a complete troll again, with the largest remaining piece winning that particular race. A troll that is completely dismembered will have its largest surviving chunk eventually grow into a full, healthy, murderous adult, while the smaller pieces may spend some time continuing to flail around and bite things before they either get destroyed or start regenerating independently. Only fire and acid reliably arrest troll regeneration. Everything else, swords, arrows, spells that deal bludgeoning or piercing or slashing damage, falling into a pit, having a dungeon ceiling dropped on you, all of it will hurt the troll, will knock a troll down, will apparently kill a troll, and then will fail to finish the job. The troll gets back up. The troll is always getting back up unless something burning is involved. Trolls know this about themselves, which is interesting. They have an instinctive, deep-seated fear of fire. It's one of the very few things that genuinely frightens them. The problem, and this is a problem both for the troll and for anyone hoping the troll will simply stay away, is that trolls are also extraordinarily hungry. They're essentially all the time, and their hunger frequently overrides their fear. The troll that smells food will often walk towards a torch rather than away from it, because the troll has run this calculation before and decided that the food is worth it. The troll is usually wrong about this. The troll does it anyway. Trolls are not known for long-term strategic thinking. Trolls will eat anything, and I mean that without significant exaggeration. Grubs, insects, roots, fungi, fish, bears, horses, livestock, humanoids of any variety. All of it is food for the troll, and all of it gets the same basic treatment, which is to say, it gets eaten as quickly as possible before something else tries to take it. Trolls do not cook. Trolls do not preserve. Trolls eat what they find immediately, and then they look for more. This voracious, undiscriminating appetite means trolls can survive in essentially any climate. You find them in Arctic wastelands, in tropical jungles, in temperate forests, in mountain ranges, swamps, coastal regions, the Underdark, and the deserts. Their biological adaptivity, their extraordinary susceptibility to mutation we'll be discussing shortly, means that troll populations don't just survive in extreme environments, they optimize for them. Their dark vision extends to 90 feet, which makes them extraordinarily effective nocturnal predators, and their sense of smell is exceptional. They can detect potential prey and potential threats well before visual contact is made. If a troll has smelled you, it knows you're there. The question is only what it decides to do about it. Trolls live approximately 100 years. They reach maturity at the age of 10, which is alarming given their size, and can hunt within their first year of life, spending their youth learning through what is generously described as harsh experience. In practice, young trolls learn by doing things that nearly kill them, and the things that nearly kill them teach them to fear fire, to be wary of certain predators, and to understand the general shape of the world they inhabit. Female trolls are generally larger and more powerful than males. They give birth to a single whelp roughly every 5 years, which doesn't sound like much until you consider the regeneration, the century-long lifespan, and the fact that troll populations, once established, are genuinely difficult to reduce. You can't simply kill a troll population, you have to burn it. Even then, you need to be very thorough. Female trolls are not the purely savage creatures that surface-level accounts tend to paint them as. Within troll society, they are primary caretakers of the young, raising whelps communally. A group of breeding females will den together and share responsibility for the young of the group, which is a level of cooperative social behavior that most people who have only ever encountered troll at the business end of its claws would not anticipate. The methods of that upbringing look, from the outside, extraordinarily harsh. Young trolls are deliberately exposed to fire. They're put in situations that cause them pain, that cause them to fear, that push them right up to the edge of what their regeneration can handle. From a humanoid perspective, this looks like cruelty. From a troll perspective, it is the most essential education a whelp can receive. Because a troll that doesn't viscerally, instinctually fear fire is a troll that eventually dies in it. The lesson has to be felt, it can't simply be told, and so the females teach it in the only way that sticks, through direct, painful, unforgettable experience. They also teach the whelps to revere the dark powers they acknowledge as divine, to understand the hierarchy of the pack, and to read the landscape for threat and opportunity. The females invest in this seriously because the survival of the group depends on producing whelps that are competent, feared, and, above all, alive. And then, when the young trolls are large enough and capable enough to fend for themselves, they're driven out deliberately and without apparent sentiment, because a troll that remains too long in its birth group is a competitor for resources, a threat to younger whelps, and a drain on the social structure that is already operating at the margins of what troll psychology can sustain. The drive to disperse is part of this lesson. Go, find territory, and survive. And most of them do. Here's something that doesn't get discussed enough when people talk about troll biology, and it's the thing that explains the sheer variety of troll types we're going to be covering in detail shortly. Trolls are extraordinarily susceptible to mutation. Not in a random, chaotic way, in a specific, environmentally responsive way. Trolls gain traits based on what they eat and where they live, and they pass those traits on. The troll lineage that has spent generations in the Arctic eating things adapted to cold gradually becomes something recognizably different from its lowland cousins. A troll that somehow survives long enough in a volcanic environment, feeding on fire-adapted creatures, may have developed resistances that should not be biologically possible. The lore even suggests that a troll that devours a fey creature may actually inherit one or more of that creature's supernatural traits. Not as long-term generational change, but as the individual troll that did the eating. Troll biology apparently doesn't particularly distinguish between digesting something and becoming something. Which is why the roster of variants we're about to go through is not a closed list, it's a snapshot of what troll biology has produced so far, in the environments that we know about, eating the things that we've documented. There's no reason that it stops there. Male trolls are largely solitary. They stake out territories, they defend those territories against rival males with considerable violence, and they spend the majority of their lives alone, hunting, eating, and sleeping in that order. Violence between rival males is spectacular in the way that only a fight between creatures that can regrow limbs mid-combat can be. Injuries that would kill anything else become tactical inconveniences. And these confrontations can go on for a very long time before one party decides that this particular piece of ground just isn't worth it and withdraws to regenerate somewhere quieter. When troll doos come together in group, and they do, in numbers of roughly 3 to 12 individuals, these groupings are called gangs or packs, depending on who's writing the sourcebook. And the social dynamics with them are worth understanding because they tell you a great deal about what you're walking into when you encounter one. Leadership falls on the dominant female, almost invariably, almost universally, across every culture and setting where troll behavior has been observed and recorded. It is the largest and most powerful female who runs the group. This isn't a formal arrangement with titles and ceremony, it's biological reality enforced through combat. And that combat, when it happens, is settled in a particular piece of troll social theatre that is genuinely fascinating. When a leadership challenge occurs, the fight is rarely fatal. Remember, these are creatures that can regrow, so killing each other would require sustained application of fire and acid, which is not how trolls typically settle internal disputes. What actually happens is that the loser gets her head removed and thrown, not as a killing blow, as a statement. The dominant female tears off the challenger's head and tosses it as far as she can manage, sometimes considerable distance from the lair. And here's where troll biology makes things fascinating. The head is almost certainly the smaller remaining part. The troll regeneration is very specific on this point. The creature regrows from the largest surviving piece, which means that the body, back in the lair, immediately begins regrowing a new head. And the original head, wherever it landed in the undergrowth outside, begins the slow, humiliating process of simply dying. It doesn't regrow a body, it just rots. The sourcebooks describe this as the loser being left to stew, which now reads somewhat differently. The head isn't stewing while it recovers, the head is lost permanently and finally, while the body belonging to it regrows itself to something better. A week or two later, the challenger wanders back into the lair with a brand new head, and absolutely nobody is under any illusion about what just happened to her. The dominant female didn't just beat her rival, she permanently removed part of her. This is a statement of dominance that even a creature with a new head and a fully regenerated body cannot argue with. Now, if you're sitting there wondering whether a troll can actually function without its head in the interim, the answer, gloriously, is yes. And we have proof from Volo's Guide to the North, of all places. There is a passably rated black-painted inn in the north called the Headless Troll, named after a specific incident in which a beheaded troll denied its head but apparently not denied its sense of direction or its profound desire not to be on fire, fled through the hallways of the building while being pursued by a mob carrying torches. It left permanent scorch marks throughout the building. Someone looked at those scorch marks, looked at their ruined inn, and decided the only reasonable response was to name the place after the experience and charge slightly more for the rooms with the most interesting burn patterns, which is honestly a very human reaction to a very troll problem. The troll without its head is not a dead troll, it's an inconvenienced troll, busily regrowing its replacement and still more than capable of causing serious damage to anyone in its immediate vicinity in the meantime. You can't essentially easily kill your foe, your rival. So take her head, throw it into the bushes to rot, and let her come wandering back wearing a new one as a permanent reminder of exactly where she stands. The dominant female is in an established troll pack frequently develops into something that functions as a shaman or a chieftain, not just the strongest individual, but the organizing intelligence of the group, directing hunting patterns, managing territorial claims, and conducting whatever religious observances trolls engage in. We'll be getting into the theology of trolls in considerable detail shortly, because Vaprak the Destroyer deserves his own moment, and I intend to give him one. But first, how trolls relate to the wider world of organized evil. Trolls don't just exist in isolation out in the wilderness, eating deer and the occasional unlucky shepherd. They slot into the power structures of evil civilization with a horrifying degree of compatibility. Orcs actively welcome trolls into their warbands and are proud of them. The presence of a troll or two in an orc raiding force is a statement of status as much as a tactical decision. Goblin tribes sometimes find themselves ruled by a troll boss, which the goblins respond to with a combination of terror and barely concealed scheming, carefully managing their enormous, dim and easily distracted leader through the strategic application of food, flattery and the occasional conveniently placed enemy to redirect its attention outward. It works more often than it probably should, which says something unflattering about troll cognition and something quietly impressive about goblin social engineering. Gnolls are perhaps the most natural allies trolls have among the humanoid races. The Gnoll lifestyle, constant movement, wanton slaughter, and no permanent settlements or to maintain or defend appeals directly to troll temperament in a way that the more structured societies of orcs and goblins don't quite manage. A troll running with a Gnoll warband isn't being managed or manipulated, it's just doing what it would do anyway, in company that shares its general outlook on the world. And it is perhaps the same compatibility, the shared appetite for violence and movement and the raw mechanics of predation, that explains one of the more unsettling creatures associated with troll kind. Troll hounds are believed to be wargs that have been infused with troll blood. And the result is exactly what you'd expect from that particular combination of ingredients. They possess troll-like regeneration. They are savage, fast, and extraordinarily difficult to put down permanently without fire. Trolls breed them, keep them, and regard them with something approaching affection, which for a troll means they haven't eaten them yet and have no immediate plans to. They serve as pets, as guards, and in lean times or moments of tactical necessity as emergency rations, which the trollhound seems to accept as part of the arrangement with the resignation of a creature that understands its place in the food chain and has made its peace with it. What's particularly interesting about trollhounds is their relationship with trolls at that instinctive level. They don't simply tolerate trolls the way a trained animal tolerates its handler. They recognize trolls as the alphas of their pack instinctively and immediately, in a way that suggests the troll blood in their lineage carries something more than just, it carries a biological acknowledgement of hierarchy. A trollhound encountering a troll it has never met before will defer to it. The troll is always the apex. The trollhound always knows this. Gnoll warbands that run alongside trolls will sometimes have trollhounds in the mix as well, which makes those particular warbands considerably more dangerous than their numbers suggest, not just because of the added combat capability, but because trollhounds are effective scouts trackers, extending the warband's awareness of the surroundings in ways that complement the troll's own exceptional sense of smell. Hags favour trolls as guardians, particularly anise hags, which have an aesthetic and practical appreciation for something that is large and that difficult to kill, standing between them and whatever problem is coming through the door. Fire giants allow trolls to roam the less frequented perimeter sections of their fortresses, surviving on diseased slaves and kitchen scraps, providing security without requiring salary, supervision, or any particular acknowledgement of their existence. The trolls, for their part, seem content with this arrangement as long as the scraps keep coming. The arrangement with all of these factions is always fundamentally transactional. Feed them, pay them in treasure or the opportunity to acquire it, give them something to fight. Meet those conditions and trolls will serve as shock troops, guards, and heavy muscle with considerable enthusiasm. Let any of these conditions lapse and the arrangement ends immediately, violently, and at the expense of whatever let the food supply run out. Loyalty is not part of the equation, it never was. Germalain, these tiny malicious rat-keeping nuisances of the Underdark, I've got a video on them, have developed a scavenger relationship with troll lairs, moving in behind a troll and picking through the remains of its kills for anything the troll has discarded. The troll tolerates this because the Germalain are too small to be worth eating and their presence serves as a practical purpose. A lair regularly stripped of rotting organic matter is a healthier lair, and even trolls benefit from not sleeping in the accumulated remains of several years of enthusiastic carnivory. Trolls have also been observed deliberately leaving bodies outside their lairs to attract carrion crawlers, which they then use as a living perimeter defense. It is, for a creature not generally credited with sophisticated planning ability, a surprisingly effective security system. Trolls prefer to lair in caves, natural caves with small entrances and winding tunnels that favour the troll's size and fighting style over that of most things trying to get in. They block entrances with boulders if they want privacy or security, and the interior of a troll lair is exactly what you expect from a creature that eats everything and throws away almost nothing. Bones, scraps, the inorganic remains of every meal the occupant has had since moving in. The scattered amongst those is treasure. Because trolls do accumulate treasure, not through commerce, not through craft, not through any economic activity that would make sense to a merchant guild, through theft, through plunder, through the systematic stripping of valuables from every adventurer and traveller unfortunate enough to cross their path. A troll's treasure is a measure of its power. Platinum coins in particular carry status weight disproportionate to the actual purchasing utility. The troll has no use for purchasing anything, but it knows that platinum is rare and heavy and reflects light beautifully and represents past victories. And that's enough. Magic items are valued even more highly because a magical weapon is not just a status symbol, but a tool for producing more status symbols by relieving future adventurers of their possessions. The hoard sits among the bones in the lair, a primitive display of accumulated dominance. In areas where no suitable cave exists, trolls dig. They excavate what are called troll holes, den traps dug into the earth and covered with a lattice of twigs and leaves that renders them almost entirely undetectable to anyone walking over them. 90% undetectable, according to the sources, which means that if you're traveling through known troll territory and you're not actively and carefully watching where you put your feet, you may shortly find yourself in a dark hole with a troll, which is one of the least pleasant situations the game has to offer. More cunning trolls, and there's genuine variety of troll intelligence. more than the stereotype suggests, sometimes develop specialization in hunting humanoids specifically. These individuals train themselves in tracking, in reading the patterns of humanoid movement and settlement, and identifying the most efficient routes between prey populations. The sources describe them as rangers, in the mechanical sense, which is deeply unsettling application of that word. There's also a persistent rumour across several sources that some troll bands employ doppelgangers as spies. Shapeshifters who enter human settlements disguised as peddlers or villagers to identify wealthy or weak targets for the trolls to ambush later. Whether this represents a level of organisational sophistication that trolls are genuinely capable of sustaining, or whether it reflects the influence of something smarter pulling strings in the background, the sources don't definitively say. Either way, the troll problem is occasionally more coordinated than it appears. Now, on to the variants. There are a remarkable number of them, drawn from sources spanning 50 years of published material, from the original Fiend folio through to the later Monster Manual volumes and the bestiaries, with Dragon Magazine filling in some of the most exotic corners of troll biology along the way. Settle back, grab yourself another tasty beverage, we're about to get into it. The Scrag, sometimes called the marine troll, appears across multiple editions of the Monster Manual and comes in two distinct varieties, freshwater and saltwater, of course. Similar enough in general profile, but different enough in the details to matter. A scrag only regenerates when immersed in water. Get one on dry land and you have something that you can permanently kill by sustained damage, not just by fire and acid. Get one in its element and you have a considerably worse situation. The saltwater variety has evolved shorter forelimbs, compensated by a massive maw filled with hundreds of needle-sharp teeth, making them devastating in close quarters underwater combat. Roughly 10% of saltwater scrags are intelligent enough to manufacture and wear armor, shell plates, and shark skin. Crude, but genuinely effective. A scrag in shell armor in deep water regenerating freely is a problem of a different order than what most parties prepare for when someone mentions aquatic trolls. The ice troll, detailed in the Fiend folio and carried through later monster manuals and into Bestiary 2, is smaller than the standard variety and significantly smarter. Semi-transparent, with a cold bluish cast to their skin that rendered them difficult to spot in Arctic environments, ice trolls retain the standard vulnerability to fire but are entirely at home in cold that would kill most things. They cage their victims, keeping them alive, and deliberately fatten them up before eating them, a relationship with food that goes well beyond immediate hunger into something that looks uncomfortably like livestock management. Ice trolls also maintain a mercenary relationship with frost giants, a connection we'll be returning to when we discuss where trolls sit in the broader giant hierarchy. Ice troll blood is considerably more valuable than the standard variety. Beyond its regenerative properties, it is a vital component in the manufacture of frost-brand swords and rings of cold resistance, making ice troll hunting a commercially significant enterprise in certain northern settlements, for those willing to accept the occupational hazards involved. The rock troll first appeared in Dragon Magazine issue 141 and was later picked up in Bestiary 2. Creatures of the deep places, subterranean caverns, the lightless mineral passages of the Underdark. They come with a specific and quite dramatic vulnerability. Sunlight petrifies them, not in a slow deterioration. On contact with natural light, daylight, a rock troll turns to stone immediately and completely. In their preferred environment, their skin shifts color to match the surrounding rock type, providing camouflage that, in the right conditions, renders them nearly undetectable. They also have a connection to the elemental plane of Earth that gives them an unusual direct relationship with the stone around them. And when they hit with both claws simultaneously, they can deliver an automatic bite of almost mechanical precision. The stone troll from Dragon Magazine issue 199 is distinct from the rock troll, and the distinction matters because these two varieties despise each other with an intensity the sources describe as legendary and irreconcilable. Stone trolls are hairless petrivores. They eat rocks and gems and processed ore common to their territory. A mineral diet, their physiology assimilates directly into their skin, producing a hard, rocky hide and natural camouflage. This same mineral diet produces something else entirely unexpected: longevity. While standard trolls live roughly a century, stone trolls are capable of surviving in excess of 500 years. 5 centuries of survival in an environment that is actively trying to kill you produces a particular kind of patience. And patience combined with near-perfect mineral camouflage and centuries of refined hunting techniques is a genuinely alarming combination. Their hatred of rock trolls is absolute and permanent and will never under any circumstances be set aside. A gift to any dungeon master clever enough to put them both in the same dungeon level. The Forest Troll from Monster Manual 3 is one of the more significant departures from the standard troll template. Medium-sized, standing only 6 to 6.5 feet tall, and notably smarter than their larger kin. Forest trolls are crafty hunters that use sophisticated tactics and produce a poison from their own saliva to weaken prey before closing in. The muskwort is a specific regional variety found in the Chondlewood in Faerun, distinguished by the ability to expel a blinding musk that disorients anything in its immediate vicinity. A forest troll that you cannot see clearly and has already poisoned you, that knows the terrain far better than you do, is a reminder that trolling encounters are not always about something enormous charging directly at your face. The Cave Troll, also from Monster Manual 3, is a powerful instinct-driven carnivore equipped with scythe-like claws, specifically adapted for quick, devastating evisceration in the dark, confined spaces of underground environments. Races like the Drow and the Beholders frequently press cave trolls into service as guardians for their subterranean holdings. It's a biological lock on a door, and what it lacks in tactical sophistication it compensates for in raw, enclosed space lethality. Also from Monster Manual 3, the Mountain Troll, 17 feet tall, massive even by troll standards. The Mountain Troll dominates other creatures through sheer physical presence and regards its followers primarily as a reserve food supply. When resources run short, the Mountain Troll eats its own minions with the same casual indifference it applies to everything else, and the minions in question seem to have made their peace with this as the price of proximity to something this difficult to kill. The Crystalline Troll from Monster Manual 3 has skin of translucent glass, simultaneously beautiful and deeply unsettling to look at. The glass composition grants complete immunity to acid, removing one of the 2 standard tools in any anti-troll approach. The compensating vulnerability is sonic damage, which can shatter their glass-like hides with brutal efficiency. Useful information if you happen to be carrying something like that, considerably less useful if you're not. Their translucent skin also makes regenerating biology visible in real time. You can watch the wounds closing. Whether you find it fascinating or horrifying probably depends on how immediately the problem concerns you. The Moss Troll from Bestiary 3 is smaller and lankier than the standard variety and can alter its appearance to resemble mossy trees, aided by the fact that its flesh is uniquely capable of supporting the growth of actual moss and mold just as readily as tree bark does. It's a proficient climber, patient, camouflaged, and you will not see it until it decides that you should. Unlike almost every other troll variant, acid has no special effect on the moss's troll's regeneration. Only fire can arrest its healing. Now the War Troll from Monster Manual 3 is something different in kind rather than degree. Every other variant on this list represents what troll biology produces when left on its own to adaptive devices. The War Troll represents what troll biology produces when something intelligent applies deliberate intention to the process. Magically engineered soldiers, purpose-built for organized warfare. War trolls are methodical where standard trolls are chaotic, disciplined where standard trolls are instinctive, and they use weapons and wear armor with a competence that reflects the considerable effort that went into making them this way. One of the very few troll variants that become iconic enough to escape the original context entirely and take on a life of their own across multiple settings and editions. We will be returning to the War Trolls at length when we get to Eberron. The Blade Rager Troll from Monster Manual 5 represents perhaps the most disturbing entry on this list, and that is genuinely competitive company. These trolls have been flayed alive so that steel plates and claws can be riveted directly onto their bones and their skulls by fire giants who apparently looked at a standard troll and decided it needed improving. The process is exactly horrific as it sounds and produces a creature that lives in constant, unthinkable agony. That agony is the point. The Blade Rager is more dangerous and more aggressive than a standard troll precisely because it cannot rest, cannot be comfortable, cannot experience anything except pain and the drive to inflict that pain outward into the world. The constant torment has also shredded whatever passed with their minds. Any creatures that attempts direct mental contact with a Blade Rager, like a detect thought spell or a telepathic probe, anything of that nature, takes wisdom damage for the trouble because they make contact with not a mind so much as an open wound that has learned to think. And when a Blade Rager finally dies, it doesn't simply fall, the body explodes into a 30-foot burst, propelling its grafted steel plates and claws outward as shrapnel, dealing 5 dice of piercing damage to everything in range. The Blade Rager Trolls is, in the most literal possible sense, dangerous to be near even after you've killed it. The fire giants responsible for this innovation created a weapon that punishes you for fighting it, punishes you for thinking about it, and punishes you for finishing it. They'd be very pleased with themselves. From Dragon Magazine issue 199, 3 variants that represent some of the most exotic directions troll biology has taken in the published lore. The Phase Troll is a mutant that emerged from prolonged exposure to areas of wild or unstable magic. Phase Trolls possess psionic abilities and can dimension door at will, which transforms the standard troll encounter dynamic entirely. A creature that can teleport, that regenerates, that you can't simply run from or contain. It's a fundamentally different tactical problem. Their bones are sought after for the creation of magic items involving dimensional travel and illusions, while their blood is specifically prized for mind-affecting magics. 80% of phase trolls are sterile, which the surrounding wildlife presumably regards as one of the few pieces of good news associated with their existence. The grey troll is not born, that's one's made as well. These are standard trolls that survived being completely level drained by undead, a process that should, by any reasonable biological logic, have killed them, but instead produced something new. Grey trolls have a connection to the negative material plane, are sterile, and live only 25 to 75 years before crumbling to dust. They are trolls that are already dying, carrying the mark of their encounter with death for whatever remains of their shortened lives. That dust, when they finally crumble, is itself extraordinarily valuable. Alchemists use it to create a magical item and potions providing resistance to acid, cold, and electricity. A grey troll is, in its own horrible way, worth more dead than it ever was alive. The Fire Troll, also from Dragon Magazine 199, is blood-red skinned with orange hair and dwells in volcanic regions where most creatures can't survive. It's immune to fire, which removes the single most reliable tool in any anti-troll approach. Fire Trolls prey on fire newts and reportedly on fire giants, which gives some indication of where they sit in the local food chain. They can throw magma blobs as a ranged attack, actual lava. Their blood is a mauve colour and is extremely corrosive to metal, while having no effect on stone, wood or flesh. A metal weapon that draws blood from a fire troll will simply melt away in the wielder's hand, which is a deeply unpleasant surprise in the middle of an already unpleasant situation. Thieves' guilds prize fire troll blood specifically for sabotage work. Applied to hinges, locks or structured metal components, it will eat through them with no effect on the surrounding stonework or woodwork. From Dragon Magazine issue 141 and the original Fiend Folio, the Giant Troll, appearing in the Fiend Folio and carried forward into later monster manuals, is a crossbreed between a hill giant and a troll. Ooh, picture that. Wielding spiked clubs made from tree trunks, the giant two-headed troll, also from the Fiend Folio, is an Etten-like mutation. 2 heads, difficult to surprise, wearing filthy animal skins and representing the standard problem of multi-headed creatures. There's no single point of authority you can neutralize to end the encounter. Then there's the Black Troll, also called the Demon Troll. It's the most powerful variant in the published literature, believed to be descended from standard trolls fundamentally altered by demonic forces of the Abyss. They stand over 13 feet tall with smooth black skin, gleaming green eyes, and red horns, primarily found across the layers of the Abyss where extremely rare elsewhere, which is one of the few genuinely good pieces of news associated with them. Beyond the physical, black trolls possess a suite of supernatural abilities that place them in a different category from every other variant on this list. Bolts of chained lightning 3 times per day, capable of injuring entire groups simultaneously, used without hesitation even in close combat because the black troll is immune to electricity. Their ability to gate in reinforcements once per day, additional trolls, dretch demons, or more black trolls, at will. They can cast darkness, pyrotechnics, telekinesis, dispel magic, and teleport without error. They require magical weapons to hit, and Black Troll is not a troll encounter, it's a boss encounter wearing a troll's face, found in the one place in the multiverse that already is trying to kill you just by default. The Spirit Troll, from the Feed Folio and later monster manuals, is the most insidious variety of all, precisely because you can't see it. It's believed to be a crossbreed between a troll and an invisible stalker. Spirit trolls are permanently invisible, and their attacks go well beyond physical damage. Their claws are supernaturally cold and diffuse. Rather than simply wounding, they drain strength points directly from the victim, weakening them with every strike in ways that compound across the encounter. And their bite's worse. When a spirit troll bites, it adds the damage directly to their own hit points, healing itself as it feeds. An invisible creature that regenerates, that drains your ability to fight back, that heals itself by hurting you. The Spirit Troll is the kind of encounter that makes experienced players stop and reconsider their career choices. And finally, from Bestiary 3, the Jotun Troll. 9 heads, 30 feet tall, a single shared mind and a stomach distributed across 9 separate points of argument. Because the heads of the Jotun Troll, despite their sharing a single mind and that single stomach, bicker constantly and specifically over which mouth gets the privilege of eating a particular piece of prey. The Jotun Troll is not a wandering monster, it's a landmark. And it's the kind of thing that gets noted on maps that the entire settlements relocate to avoid. When one appears in a campaign, it should feel like a geological event because this is functionally what it is. 9 heads, 1 stomach, constant arguments about whose turn it is to eat you. Somewhere in that detail is the entire soul of troll biology in miniature. Tremendous power, tremendous resilience, and an internal social dynamic that manages to be simultaneously terrifying and kind of absurd. Before we move on, troll blood. I mentioned it several times because it comes up repeatedly in the sources and has practical applications that go well beyond any individual encounter. The green blood of a standard troll represents approximately 400 gold pieces worth of alchemical material, enough raw product for 3 potions of healing or poison antidotes. Ice troll blood commands a premium beyond that, being a vital component in the manufacture of frostband swords and rings of cold resistance. Fire troll blood, more mauve and metal corrosive, is prized by thieves' guilds for specialized sabotage work, as I mentioned. Phase troll bones go to artificers working on dimensional magic. Grey troll dust produces resistance to acid, cold, and electricity. Troll hound blood finds its way into potions specifically designed for curing or causing disease. Even the byproducts of troll death have a market, which means that in any region with an established troll population, there are almost certainly professionals whose entire livelihood is built around the careful, dangerous, and presumably lucrative business of troll harvesting. Those people know things about trolls that the monster manual doesn't tell you. They are excellent sources of information, employment, and complications for any party operating in troll country. Every culture has its gods, and trolls are no exceptions. What is perhaps surprising, given everything we have established about troll nature, is that their theology is not simply an extension of their appetite. It's considerably more interesting than that. Vaprak, the Destroyer, is the chaotic evil deity, patron deity of trolls and ogres, recognized across the giant pantheon as the father of both races. Depicted as a 15-foot tall troll with distorted features and blood-stained claws. He embodies elemental savagery, strength, and a rapacious, unending hunger that mirrors the biological reality of his followers with uncomfortable precision. His symbol is a taloned claw. His favoured weapon are those very same claws, or the Great Club. His domains are chaos, destruction, evil, strength, and war. His portfolio covers combat, aggression, greed, and frenzy. There's nothing subtle about Vaprak. He does not traffic in mystery or metaphor. He is what his followers are, scaled up to divine proportions and given cosmic permanence. His origins in the giant mythological tradition are complicated in ways that explain a great deal about his position in the divine hierarchy. According to giant lore, Vaprak fathered the ogre race through an adulterous affair with Othea, the mother of the true giants, which makes ogres the Morg kin of the giant races, the unholy or dishonourable offspring of an illicit union, forever marked by that origin in social and religious structure of giant kind. Vaprak himself lives in a state of perpetual anxiety about this, constantly worried that his followers will abandon him for the more powerful members of the giant pantheon. Aware that his position is precarious, aware that the legitimate giant gods regard him with contempt. For a deity of destruction and frenzy, Vaprak carries a surprisingly heavy burden of insecurity, which is perhaps the most humanizing thing about him, and also, in its way, the most pathetic. The origins of Trollkind itself reach further back than Vaprak, into a layer of giant mythology that predates organized theology. Many giant traditions speak of a primal progenitor known as the Dark Earth Mother, an ancient chthonic force from which Trollkind originally emerged before Vaprak claimed them as his own. This origin story exists in the background of troll religion rather than at its center, acknowledged but not celebrated, the way that the very old and inconvenient truths tend to be in most religious traditions. Worship of Vaprak happens primarily in caves and deep wilderness. It's not a religion of temples and ceremony, it's a religion of action, of violence, and the kill itself is an act of devotion. Trolls don't build altars, they don't light candles, they honour Vaprak through every kill, and that is understood by all parties to be sufficient. The shamans of Vaprak operate under a specific and demanding set of divine restrictions. They're strictly forbidden from using healing or curative magic, which is a meaningful sacrifice for a creature whose entire survival strategy is built around regeneration and endurance. They are actively encouraged to use the reverse of those same spells, the harmful versions. The kill is the sacrifice, after all, every kill, always. Upon gaining a level, a shaman of Vaprak must seek out and slay a creature of their own size and power, often a rival tribe member, using only natural weapons and no magic. This is simultaneously a proof of personal power, a demonstration of worthiness to the god, and a convenient mechanism for preventing the shamanic population from getting too large. Vaprak's theology is efficient in its brutality. There's also a small chance, 2% if in any given battle, that Vaprak will directly intervene in a shaman's combat by granting them a state of berserk fury. Not reliably, certainly not predictably, not in response to prayer or need, just occasionally, capriciously, as gods of chaos tend to operate. 2% doesn't sound like much until you're the thing fighting the shaman and you suddenly realize that the situation has changed in ways you didn't anticipate. Some ogre tribes associated with Vaprak practice a rite called the 6-day night. The supplicant remains alone in a dark cavern for 6 days without food, in complete darkness and silence. Success grants higher status and a special divine favour. Given that ogres are not known for introspection or patience, this is the more demanding spiritual trial for them than it might initially appear, and the fact that it exists at all suggests a contemplative undercurrent to Vaprak worship that the surface-level theology of violence and hunger doesn't quite prepare you for. Vaprak faces a significant and ongoing challenge for the loyalty of ogres from Baphomet, the demon lord of beasts and minotaurs. Baphomet actively lures ogre tribes away from Vaprak's worship by promising them the power to avenge themselves against the giants who look down on them. And he sometimes manifests a Gower, a demonic ogre, among a tribe as a sign of his favour. For Vaprak, whose divine power is directly proportional to his number of worshippers, losing ogre tribes to Baphomet is not merely a theological inconvenience, it's an existential threat. Then there is the matter of frost giants and the ritual known as the Everlasting One. Most frost giants, they absolutely despise trolls, regarding them with the contempt that true giants reserve for the lesser giant kin, but occasionally a frost giant of low rank in the ordning, frustrated, hungry for power, and that conventional giant society isn't offering, will turn to the clandestine worship of Vaprak. Vaprak's response to a frost giant supplicant is characteristically direct. He tempts them with dreams of glory and nightmares of cannibalism, visions that grow in intensity until the giant either recoils from them or embraces them. If the giant embraces them, if they genuinely relish the vision Vaprak sends, the god responds by sending a troll to the giant, and the giant must devour the troll entirely in a gory feast. If they complete the feast, they are transformed. They become an everlasting one, gaining massive physical enhancement and, critically, a troll's regenerative abilities, which for a frost giant is an extraordinary power multiplier, since they are already formidable and now nearly impossible to permanently kill. The Everlasting One is the most interesting creature in the broader troll lore precisely because it represents the transfer of the troll's defining biological characteristic into a completely different body, through a divine ritual that is equal parts theological and grotesquerie. It also represents a Vaprak operating on the edges of his own domain, reaching into giant society and offering a form of enhancement that giant society itself can't provide. A more sophisticated piece of divine politics than his surface-level theology of violence and hunger would suggest he's capable of. Sneaky. Beyond Vaprak, some trolls also acknowledge Erythanil, the many, the god of slaughter. Where Vaprak's followers are killed to eat, to dominate, to honour their god through acts of predation, Erythanil attracts those for whom killing has become its own complete and sufficient purpose. The distinction is subtle but meaningful at the table, because a troll shaman as Erythanil will behave differently from a standard Vaprak worshipper in ways that experienced players will eventually notice. Then there is Jublix, the Faceless Lord, demon lord of slimes and oozes. He hasn't got any specific theological claim on trolls, but where Jublix goes, the boundary between biological matter and something stranger becomes permeable in ways that troll biology, with its extraordinary susceptibility to mutation, responds to in unpredictable ways. Remember that connection to doppelgangers? A troll that has spent extended time in an area touched by Jublix's influence is not a standard troll anymore. It may not be a recognizable variant at all. For dungeon masters who want their troll encounters to carry an additional layer of wrongness, the presence of Jublix in the local cosmological neighborhood is sufficient justification for a troll that does things that trolls were not supposed to do. And the black troll raises a related question. If the Abyss can produce black trolls from standard trolls through demonic influence, and if troll biology is as susceptible to external forces as we have established, then what else might the lower planes be producing from raw troll material that we simply can't have or haven't heard of yet or encountered? The black troll is the documented example. It's almost certainly not the only one. Vaprak presumably is well aware of this. The idea that demonic forces are reaching into his primary species and producing variants that are nothing to his divine authority. That's exactly the kind of problem that keeps him an insecure god of destruction up at night. If a god sleeps, which given Vaprak's portfolio seems unlikely. We've already covered how trolls relate to the wider world, their mercenary relationships with orcs, goblins, gnolls, hags, and giants, the troll-hound dynamic, the Germalane scavengers, and the complex position of trolls as they occupy an absolute lowest tier of the giant ordning alongside ogres, Fomorians, and Ettins, looked down upon by true giants as morgue, unholy, dishonourable, inferior kin. What's worth adding now is that we have the theological context is that this is a low position in the ordning, but not merely a social prejudice. It is a religious one. Being born a troll is considered inherently morgue in giant culture, and Vaprak's own precarious position among the divine powers of the giant pantheon reflects and reinforces that status as a cosmic level. The trolls are at the bottom, their god is at the bottom, the two factions are connected, and each perpetuates the other. One relationship we haven't fully addressed is trolls and dragons. Of course we want to talk about dragons. Trolls are among the very few creatures that actually respect and fear dragons, not because of any theological connection, but because dragons are simply one of the very few things capable of killing a troll permanently and convincingly enough that even a troll's instincts register the fact. The ancient racial grudge between giants and dragons complicates this further, making conflict likely whenever the two meet despite the troll's better judgment. A combination that tends to end badly for the troll and expensively for whatever settlement happens to be nearby when it happens. So how does a troll actually fight? The short answer is enthusiastically and without significant strategic forethought. The longer answer is considerably more useful if you are the one on the other side of the encounter. Trolls are ambush predators by preference, not because they lack the physical capability for a straightforward frontal assault. They manifestly do not lack that, but because ambush is more efficient, and efficiency in predation, even for a creature not generally credited for sophisticated planning, is a survival advantage in and of itself that gets selected for over generations. The preferred ambush techniques involve herding. Trolls who maneuver prey towards dead ends, cliff edges, ravines, pit traps, or any geography that removes the option to retreat. A troll that has you cornered is a troll that knows the fight is already won, because a cornered target cannot run from the regenerative problem and cannot run from the follow-up attack while the first wound is already closing. Troll holes serve a dual purpose here. They are lairs, yes, but they're also tactical assets positioned along routes that prey are likely to use, channeling movement in directions the trolls prefer. In direct combat, the troll's standard attack routine is claw, claw, bite. 2 raking strikes with those long, ungainly arms, followed by a lunge with the jaws. And the reach of those arms provide mean the troll is attacking from a distance that feels uncomfortably close, even when you think they've created space. The bite is not a grab and hold, it's a tear. The troll eats you during combat when the opportunity presents itself, which is both disgusting and tactically significant because it means the troll is replenishing resources mid-fight in a way that its opponents are not. Severed limbs continue to fight. The troll arm that's been cut off will continue to claw at whatever is nearest while the main body regenerates its replacement. Experienced troll hunters deal with detached pieces immediately rather than leaving them to cause problems. With fire, always fire, even on the pieces. Trolls that advance through level progression, primarily as barbarians or as clerics of Vaprak, represent significantly more complex tactical problems. A troll barbarian in a rage with regeneration running simultaneously is one of the more durable things you will encounter in any tier of play. The rage adds damage and resistance, and regeneration handles the consequences of taking hits. And the result is a creature that can sustain combat far beyond what its initial hit point total would suggest. A troll cleric of Vaprak brings a different problem: access to harmful versions of curative spells, the occasional berserk fury granted by divine intervention, and the kind of tactical awareness that comes from being the organizing intelligence of a troll pack rather than simply its most aggressive member. Forest trolls poison before they engage, weakening targets before closing in, using terrain and sight lines with the sophistication that most parties do not expect from something with troll in the name. Ice trolls are patient in ways that standard trolls are not, willing to wait, to maneuver, to set up kills across extended timeframes. Phase trolls introduce the dimension door problem, a creature that can teleport, regenerates, and you can't pin down or contain, requires a fundamentally different approach than anything else in the troll catalogue. War trolls fight with weapons and armor and military discipline, not ambush predators in the standard troll sense, but something closer to heavy infantry, organized and methodical, capable of holding formations and executing tactical instructions in ways that standard trolls simply can't. A few tactical notes that experienced troll hunters emphasize across the sources, and they are worth stating plainly. Fire is not optional, it's the entire strategy. Everything you do in a troll encounter is in service of the moment when you apply fire to the downed troll, because without that moment, the encounter does not end, it just pauses. Parties that enter troll country without reliable fire sources are not prepared for troll country. Acid works, but it's less reliable in the field and as a field expedient than fire. It requires closer application in most cases and is something most parties carry in insufficient quantity. It's the backup for the backup, not the primary plan. Troll pieces must be burned, detached limbs, all of that needs fire applied immediately or it remains a problem. Keep water away from scrags on dry land. Sunlight solves rock trolls above ground. Sonic damage solves crystalline trolls. Every variant has its specific solution, and the target challenge of a troll encounter is frequently less about the combat itself and more about knowing which troll you're dealing with before the fight happens. And finally, trolls that are on fire do not fight normally. They panic. The instinctive, deep-seated terror of fire overrides tactical thinking, overrides aggression, overrides the hunger that drives most of their decision-making. A troll on fire wants to stop being on fire more than it wants anything else in the world, and the terror can be exploited. A burning troll will flee, it will thrash, it will make poor decisions. Use the torch early, use it often, and make sure you have backup torches. Trolls appear across virtually every major campaign setting, and while most of what we have covered applies universally, a few setting-specific details are worthy of our attention. In Eberron, the troll is not simply wilderness monster. They are citizens of a kind. Most have been pushed out of the civilized nations of Corvair and now live in Driam, the monster kingdom ruled by the daughters of Sorakel, where they serve as military muscle and elite soldiers in a functioning political entity. House Tharnask recruits the more disciplined individuals, particularly war trolls, as mercenaries. The idea of troll as with a contract, a chain of command, and professional reputation is one that Eberron handles better than almost any other setting, and it opens up encounter possibilities that go well beyond anything the standard wilderness ambush offers. Eberron also provides the most elegant explanation for exotic troll variants through the Dalkir, the extraplanet lords of madness and fleshcraft, whose influence explains unusual mutations throughout the setting. Crystalline trolls, aberrant hybrids, purpose-built troll breeds, all of it fits neatly under the Dalkir umbrella without requiring additional justification. Now, Dark Sun is the opposite extreme and the most dramatic troll story in any published setting. On Athos, the world of the Dark Sun, trolls are extinct. They were exterminated during the Cleansing Wars by Rajat's companions, and the champion responsible, Hamanu, earned the title Troll Scorcher for his role in their genocide. The last Troll King, Windreaver, was slain approximately 2,000 years before the current era. One possible survivor exists, the Patchwork Troll of Dungeon Magazine issue 56, a Frankenstein creature assembled from the regenerating remains of countless dead trolls, dwelling in the Trollgrave Chasm, possibly immortal, possibly the last of its kind, possibly something that has become an entirely new form of life across centuries of regeneration and self-incorporation. It appeared in one adventure, was never expanded upon, and remains one of the rarest and most haunting troll variants in all of published D&D. Dragonlance has trolls, but never developed them significantly. The most interesting contribution is the Mewling, a degenerate troll descendant, smaller and weaker and more cunning than true trolls, occupying a goblinoid-adjacent niche. One of the very few examples of a true troll-derived species rather than a variant of trolls. And worth knowing about, if only because it suggests that troll biology, given enough time and pressure, can produce something genuinely new rather than just a modification of the existing template. So, After all of this, you want to play a troll as a character. This is not a decision to make lightly, and the game mechanics reflect that with admirable honesty. Trolls are significantly more powerful than standard player character races, and the effective character level system in 3rd edition makes you pay for that power upfront in the form of delayed advancement relative to the rest of the party. A standard troll starts at effective character level 11, 6 racial hit dice plus a level adjustment of 5. A cave troll hits an effective character level of 15. A mountain troll, if you can convince your Dungeon Master to allow you to play one, and your Dungeon Master has not immediately left the table, starts at effective character level 20. War trolls come in at effective character level 18. The half troll template, for those who want to flavor without the full commitment, adds 4 to the level adjustment of whatever base creature you are applying it to. So the rest of the party starts at level 1. You start at needing the experience equivalent of transition to level 20 if we were playing a mountain troll just to get to level 2. So it's difficult. The ability score picture is dramatic. A standard troll character gets plus 12 strength, plus 4 dexterity, and plus 12 constitution. Numbers that make most optimized martial builds look conservative. The costs are -4 intelligence, -2 wisdom, and -4 charisma, which between them explain most of the troll's social and tactical limitations and will define your character's relationship with every non-combat situation the campaign produces. Forest trolls are the notable exception here. Their intelligence and wisdom penalties are 0, making them the only troll variant that can engage with the world at something approaching standard humanoid cognitive capacity. The favoured class for most troll variants is Fighter, obviously, which is sensible but not necessarily optimal. Barbarian is the more interesting choice. A troll barbarian in Rage with regeneration running simultaneously is one of the most durable things that can exist. The Rage adds damage and resistance while the regeneration handles the consequences by absorbing hits, producing a character that can sustain combat well beyond its hit point total, as I suggested. Troll Clerics of Vaprak, on the other hand, are a compelling option, bringing divine magic and the shamanistic restrictions that I've discussed previously. No healing spells, harmful reversals only, and the occasional unpredictable gift of a berserk fury from their patron. Troll Clerics are the organizing intelligence in your party as well. Well, they'll try to be. For groups that find starting at effective character level 11 prohibitive, and most do, thank goodness, the monster class progression allows a troll character to start at level 1 and gradually acquire their full racial hit dice, ability score modifiers, and regeneration across 11 levels of play. Almost certainly the more satisfying approach at the tables, allowing the character to grow into their biology rather than arriving fully formed at a level where the most of the rest of the party is already established. You are large, 10-foot reach, plus 4-foot bonus, plus 4 bonus on grapple checks, -1 penalty to armor class and attack rolls. You do not fit through standard doorways, can't ride standard mounts, and will have strong opinions about the architectural choices of every dungeon your party enters. The -4 penalty to hide checks means that self, already not a troll's natural inclination, becomes essentially a theoretical exercise. You're not proficient with armored by default. With the exception of war trolls, who are purpose-built for armored combat, the troll in armor has made a deliberate and somewhat counterintuitive choice, sacrificing the freedom of movement and their regeneration strategy depending on it. For additional protection, they arguably need less than most other creatures. And then there's the social reality, which the sources address with characteristic frankness. Trolls are widely feared and hated across virtually every civilized society in every campaign setting. A troll player character should expect to be driven out of most towns on sight, refused service at most establishments, and regarded with immediate hostility by most authority figures regardless of alignment or reputation. The roughest mercenary bands, monster-friendly settlements, and communities that have decided pragmatism outweighs aesthetics are where a troll character will find anything approaching acceptance. But playing a troll is playing a creature the world's already decided it knows everything about, and that has, and you've decided to be something else anyway. That is, when handled well, a genuinely compelling thing to put at a table. So, we've come a long way from pre-Christian Scandinavia. We passed through the Eddas and the saga heroes, through Christian transformation, through Asbjornsen and Moe, through Kittson's illustrations, through Tolkien. We've stopped at a 1961 paperback novel and watched the single most important mechanical decision in troll history get made by a science fiction author, primarily known for his science fiction work, who wrote one fantasy novel that accidentally invented one of the most iconic creature mechanics in the history of tabletop gaming, and almost certainly had no idea what he was starting. Poul Anderson's 3 Hearts and 3 Lions gave us the regenerating troll. The troll whose severed hand runs on its fingers towards you, the troll that gets back up, the troll that requires fire. Anderson invented that, and as far as anyone can tell, entirely from his own imagination, and Gary Gygax lifted it almost directly into D&D. And 50 years later, it is so fundamental to what a troll is that most players cannot imagine the creature without it. And then we went deep into 50 years of published material through every monster manual and fiend folio and dragon magazine and bestiary, through 15 variants of the alchemical value of their blood and the theological insecurity of their god and the specific social dynamics of leadership challenges that ends with someone's head in the bushes rotting while the body grows something better. So what actually survived the journey from Norse folklore into monster manuals? The physical silhouette, the hunched posture, the long arms, the rubbery hide, the caves, the wilderness, the darkness. The fundamental role of the troll is something that lives on the edge of the safe world and makes excursions into it to cause problems. Those survived intact. What didn't make it? The iron vulnerability, the church bells, the complex centuries-deep community knowledge of how to coexist with something dangerous that wasn't going away, and the ambiguity, because the folkloric troll was negotiable. Not safe, not friendly, but you can negotiate with them. Norwegian farmers had relationships with the trolls of their local mountains that went beyond simple monster clearance. The troll belonged to a place. It had a history with that place. The D&D troll is almost entirely appetite. It's a combat encounter with mechanical solutions. The folklore troll was never quite that simple. But the best troll encounters in D&D, the ones that players remember years later, are the ones that get told as stories rather than described as statistics. They're almost always the ones that reach back across the gap and recover something the monster manual left out. The troll that has been in this valley for 3 generations and the locals have built their lives around avoiding it. The troll that the village has unspoken arrangements with, which nobody talks about what happens if the offerings stop. The troll that is, in its own terms, as legitimate and occupant of its territory as the adventurers are of theirs. Those encounters work because they are reaching towards something true, something Norwegian farmers had told stories about, the trolls of their mountains understood intuitively, and that no stat block can fully contain. Poul Anderson gave us the regeneration, Tolkien gave us the visual grammar, Gygax gave us the mechanics, but the original gift, the thing that made trolls worth imagining in the first place, came from people sitting around fires in valleys beneath dark mountains, telling each other stories about what lived up there in the dark and why you should be careful, and why, if you were very unlucky or very foolish, you might not come back. That's where the troll lives, and it always has. My name is AJ Pickett, your sage of Candlekeep, the Deckard Cain of D&D, expert on the imaginary and master of monsters. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.